Mari-Anne Chiromo, and I am an assistant director at EY, but also founder of Positive Attitude, which is my own little startup. I am based in the UK at the moment, originally from Zimbabwe, and have lived here now for longer than I lived in Zimbabwe, which is quite scary. I am a mom. I work in financial services advisory, but currently on secondment, leading a program to get more women into technology. So that's me in a nutshell.
Well, thank you so much for being here, Mari-Anne. So our first question is, you started your career during the '08 financial crisis. What was your main job hunting strategy at the time?
For me, one of the things that I strive to be is entrepreneurial in my approach to anything, and I think that's something that every person should try and unlock because it'll stand you in good stead wherever. And I'm saying that as a mom, as someone who came over here on my own as a foreigner and worked in a career that was very much geared towards relationships, that I didn't have because I didn't have those foundations. And then also to navigate something that is completely alien to me, that, the whole financial crisis, I suppose, was different for everybody. But when you have in your toolkit an ability to think on your feet and a willingness to adapt to change, a positive attitude when it comes to change, rather than thinking, oh, no, different is scary. If you embrace that and you train yourself to think, okay, what should I do around here? And look at different scenarios. That type of thinking is valuable when it comes to projects, when you're in a job, when it comes to something happening which is unexpected, like COVID or whatever, or becoming unemployed, anything like that. It's a mindset thing. So why I wanted to do the course for me, the postgrad, is that I wanted to see whether or not I needed any formal tools or any formal training that would help me on my entrepreneurial journey, because the one way of trying to secure, I suppose, your own career path is to make your job yourself. So you'll find a lot of entrepreneurship, especially for women, for foreigners, and for people from certain ethnic backgrounds. It's so difficult to get into certain workplaces, and then once you get into them, to progress is really difficult. So when you look at the numbers of entrepreneurs that are created, a lot of those people have set up their own businesses because they just got fed up of trying to knock on doors that were constantly turning them away. And the irony is that most of the time with foreigners, because you have to work that much harder, or you have to pay international fees, or you have to get visas and all of that stuff, you work so much harder. So you excel in those qualifications, but then ironically still struggle when it comes to trying to get jobs. So a lot of entrepreneurs are created in that space. And I think that's a fantastic thing. But the key fundamental is making sure that you have that mindset that's willing to adapt and that isn't afraid of knockbacks, because in every part of life, there will always be some disappointments. It's how you bounce back from that and how you make sure that it doesn't become this didn't work, so I'm not going to try anymore. And I had to do that several times. Law was what I studied and where I trained and qualified. And a lot of that whole process is about relationships. When you're a foreign student, you rely purely on your own. So the thing that you then have to rely on is, one, your academic qualifications. So you make sure you excel academically, great. And then getting your exposure, you manage that yourself, create those networking opportunities yourself. So sometimes it'll be events. Now you can do it digitally, which is great. So I didn't have access to this when I was at uni, but using things like LinkedIn, I have strong relationships that I've built with people who are super influential, but purely digitally. I've linked with them, I've sent them messages, I tag in posts, I follow what they're writing. I use tools like that to make sure I'm building my network myself so that you can rely on them and they can see you. And I also use that platform to showcase my thinking, to showcase some of the things that I'm working on so that people can see that, because the algorithm will push you out. So you become known as well for different things. And when people are looking out, they'll be like, oh yeah, we know this person. So it gets you in front of them without needing someone else to come and talk for you. You get to speak for yourself to a whole bunch of people. So I think that's the entrepreneurial type of management of your own visibility and brand that's absolutely pivotal now for job seekers, because it helps so much with getting past some of these barriers. You start to showcase yourself before you've even sent in an application.
So the next question is, what advice would you give for job seekers during COVID-19?
Yeah, so I think, there's a lot of practical stuff that's impacting job search right now. You know, when you think about the fact that a lot of people have been laid off in different industries, so the market is flooded with applicants. But at the same time, I know this is true of several industries. They've got hiring freezes because if I felt as a hiring manager, you know, we can't get approvals to recruit right now because a lot of businesses were like, "Oh, what's going on? What's happening?" And means you're fighting to be able to retain the staff you've already got within the organization. No one wants to be making redundancies or laying off people. So I think for a long time there's going to be a bizarre situation where a combination of compromised revenue streams is in and hiring freezes, and then also a flooding of the market from job seekers. For graduates, I'm thinking particularly they will be looking for work at a time when organizations might not necessarily be hiring. I know how demoralizing and deflating it is when you're making all these applications. You've worked and worked so hard for however many years to get your qualifications and you've done an amazing job. And then you think, right, I've done all the things I'm supposed to do. And then you send this application and you're like, yes, you read this role and you think, I'm ready. And then you just get the knockbacks and the rejections. And it's soul destroying because you think, what? And I went through that with my law degree. After my law degree, it was the most horrible thing. I think I sat there one time and I just thought, and you just want to give up and you have a tantrum and you just think, I'm not doing anymore. But then you know you can't give up, right? You have to keep going because otherwise, what was it all for? So what I would suggest is that in this time, particularly since, just practically speaking, lots of companies just won't be able to recruit, put a pause on the applications. What I would do instead is to find someone within that organization. Find yourself a mentor. Now you've got LinkedIn, makes it very easy to find people. You can do a search. It doesn't even have to be for a particular individual. So look for a job title. So if you're interested in analytics, search by analytics and then filter by company and then filter by location, right, in your results. And a bunch of people's names will come up. You'll be able to see their role, as well, and their levels. And then just find a few people, see their profiles, their career paths and what they're doing, and reach out to a bunch of them. Draft a little script that says, hi, this is right now, I've studied this, I'm really interested in this, and I'd love to get into blah. I know that there's probably a hiring freeze, so what I'm focusing on right now is trying to build connections to guide me into my preparation so that when applications open up, I know, and I wondered whether you'd be open to a digital mentorship. Something like that. And then that person, for one, you've got someone who's a practical mentor for guidance. For two, you've got someone within the organization. Now, most organizations have got a referral scheme. So for us at EY, we have a referral scheme. So if I know someone and there's a job, I can refer them internally for it. We're keen to have referrals because if you know someone in the organization, when you join, you're less likely to leave because you've got a friend in the firm, right? So it's stronger and it's more like, oh yeah, good. You've almost vetted them. So you've got someone who can tell you about this and who can ask information for you and say, oh, let me check with the recruiter and make inquiries from the inside that you wouldn't be able to make yourself. So you build that pool of people in different organizations, and then you've got someone on the inside, which is great. And then you can ask them, do you recommend any courses, anyone I should be following, any articles, and get some practical things. And then you can build on the academic experience you've got by attending. If they say, oh, actually, there's this digital blah, 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 build those relationships. Ask them, anyone you can introduce me to that I can talk to about this, and then take a look at the kind of articles and stories that they're writing. So you build those relationships that are going to help you with your application once the recruitment process unfreezes. And I think that's one of the most practical things you can be doing. And also posting articles, market yourself, showcase yourself. So if you aren't, the book learning is very different to real world. So what you can do is start bridging the gap between the academic and the theoretical and what's practical, like what's happening in the real world right now. How does some of the theory that you learned apply in a real world context? Now, I have a bunch of graduates that I train when they come in for graduate recruitment, and I'll ask them, what was your master's on? What did you study? What did you write your thesis? Or whatever it is. And then try and see if we as an organization can use that to turn it into a piece of thought leadership that we can publish. And now that's something that for graduates will have access to already. You've done all of these papers on contemporary issues, which a lot of organizations probably haven't done, and you've got a very unique perspective. Use that to start writing some really funky pieces of like articles and things, digestible, publish that, tag people and say, what do you think? So that they can see it, ask them for their opinion and their point of view. It's double win because your point of view is out there. Only you wrote that thesis or that article or that essay or whatever it is. But you're now getting them to see this. And then they're like, huh. And then later on when a job comes up, say, I'm thinking of applying for this. Do you think any pointers? You know what I mean? And they will be, oh, yes, I remember this person from that article. I want them to get into the firm. So I think that would be what you could focus your energies on now and then applying when the job market opens up, because it keeps you busy, it keeps you in touch with what's going on in the market, and it stops you being demoralized and discouraged by having knockbacks, because not all recruiters will tell you we actually have a hiring freeze. Some might just reject and not explain, which is the worst possible feeling.
So the next question is, do you know what is happening with EY's current recruitment scheme under COVID?
Probably to check in and be proactive. Again, on LinkedIn, I would ask directly, with the recruitment team. And on ey.com, there is a dedicated page for graduate recruitment. And we also have on Instagram and on Twitter, the graduate recruitment team have profiles. So I would message them directly and say, what's going on? Do we still have a shot? What's the process or whatever? And if the process is live, then yeah, definitely go for it and apply. And especially since I think EY has diversified its approach quite a bit. So we have a digital scheme as well. It's like an apprenticeship. We've got a few apprenticeships, those are the words, that you can come in and do alongside the graduate recruitment scheme. So finding out and hearing about what those options are and then seeing what the best one is for you, because it may not be that you want to do the grad recruitment. You might want to come in as an apprentice and learn on the job. Look at all of the options, and the best way is to speak to one of our dedicated professionals in that space. Definitely reach out to them, follow them on Twitter.
So the final question is, what does one have to do in order to stand out in a pool of applicants?
I think that's the same answer with everything. I think once you know your stuff, because at the moment, so many people, and there's so many graduates, everybody goes down that pathway. It's such a flooded market. It's like, what do you actually want to do? Rather than I want to be at this, what problems do you want to solve? Because there are multiple places and ways of being able to solve those problems. And especially now, the opportunities that are available as far as careers and doing really exciting work are so vast, like more than they ever have been. And there's no need to go down the same old traditional pathway that I would have followed. So whenever I see someone and they're trying to go down the same path, I left university like 20 years ago. You can't still be doing the same thing. It's not necessary. So I think if you want to stand out now, because it's so highly competitive and there are so many graduates competing for a teeny tiny number of jobs, you're just going to have to, in the most authentic way possible, find out what you're passionate about. Because I think for me, if you're going with your passion, the enthusiasm and energy and interest shows automatically. You know what I mean? Think about what is the thing that I really want to solve in life? What are the problems that I really want to fix? What are the things that make me feel really energized? Where as soon as something comes on the television, whatever I'm doing, I'll stop and I'll watch it. If it's a news piece about this, or if I see an article about this, I really want to read it. Or I have all these ideas. When you find your mind wandering, even when you're on holiday and you're thinking about, I wonder if we could do to fix that, what are those things? And then that should be something which in the field that you're going into, you have a chance of fixing. Because if you get that right, if you bring that combination of things together, then what you're going to be doing is, when you're on a space like LinkedIn, you'll be writing all of these articles. When you're talking to different people, when you're networking now with people and talking to them, the ideas that pop into your head are going to be so inherent in who you are, because it's what you really love. No one can replicate that. No one can compete with that, because it's you. So I think my advice would be, draw on who you are, tap into as much of yourself, bring as much of who you are, because then it makes it your unique take on any problem that's brought in front of you. Don't think I'm going into workspace now, I'm leaving that part of who I am over that side, because then you become so the same as everybody else. Tap into everything and then project that comprehensive viewpoint informed by your personal experience. That is what will make you stand out, because no one can replicate who you are, and no one will have lived exactly the same life that you have. So that's how you stand out. And then once you've got that right, I think it's leveraging those tools and doing that, writing your pieces, but writing them authentically. As long as you're authentic in what you're doing, you're going to stand out because you're just going to be one. There's only one of you. Write your articles, write your points of view, but don't copy what you saw somewhere else, Be yourself, your unique self, and be genuine. Thank you so much, Sophie Project, for having me and for this opportunity to chat with. It's been absolutely incredible, and I hope that at least some of what I've shared will be of use. If you have any follow-up questions, I'm available, and I'd love to hear your thoughts, ideas, questions, so we can continue the conversation.
Thank you so much for your tips, Mari-Anne. So Mari-Anne will actually be back next week, where she will give advice on how to navigate a career trajectory for young professionals. So stay tuned.